Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to the sixth in a series of peer-to-peer webinars for RC&D councils. Today's topic is supporting minority farmers. I'm Susan McKinney. I'm the Executive Director for Appalachian RC&D Council, and we're located in Northeast Tennessee, and we're representing the National Association of RC&D Councils for this webinar series. The National Association of RC&D Councils has embraced, let me go to the next slide, sorry. Has embraced a new model of engaging and supporting local councils. This new approach utilizes sub-awards that provide funds, leverage local investment, and build capacity across the landscape. This approach was launched in earnest in June 2019, and in the past 14 months, more than 35 sub-awards have obligated $389,000 for projects across the country. The funds come from the USDA NRCS, and they facilitate outreach and training on farm bill programs, support youth interns, career development, and build partnerships with local and national conservation organizations. This is the sixth of 8 webinars that are being held with the support of NRCS, with the goal of expanding these activities by highlighting success stories and creating connections. We have a quick survey. Only 3 questions. If you would complete this while we do a brief introduction of today's presenters. Joining me today is Dana York, who will facilitate. She's retired associate chief for NRCS, and she's also a farm owner. Terry Diadio and Michael Carlo from the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, and Jared Carter from Alabama's Mountains, Rivers, and Valleys RC&D Council. And also Rosie McVeigh is our AmeriCorps service member with ARC&D, and she's with us in the background running the technical aspects of the webinar. And I'd also like to thank and recognize the board members of National Association of RC&D Councils that are attending today. And I'll turn it over to Dana, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you. So after you, I am Dana York, and after you fill out your survey, if you could put in the chat your name and the RC&D council you're from, or the state that you're from, so we can see that as we go into our presentations. And now I'm going to turn it over to Terry Diadio, who is 15 days out from retirement. Hooray.
Hey. Hi, everybody. I'm really glad to be here. I had the honor of being your national program manager for almost 17 years. Here in national headquarters, and then also I'm still involved with the National Association through the National Conservation Planning Partnership, and also overseeing our major agreements that allow these kinds of things to happen for us to help finance this kind of activity. So it's been a great time working with RC&D, and I don't think RC&D will be completely gone from my life after I stop being a federal employee. The only thing I'm going to talk about, because Michael's going to go into the resources that NRCS has, but I just want to put on your radar that in the division that I work in, it's called Office of Outreach and Partnerships. And the outreach side is they're in the process of working on what we're calling challenge cooperative agreements. These are going to be non-competitive conservation agreement outreach for racial equity and justice conservation. So what's going to happen with these, as I said, they're not going to be competitive. It's going to be a unique process. They're going to be advertised in grants.gov, hopefully sometime in August. But you will not have to submit to grants.gov your application. There will be an email provided because it's not a competitive, so they don't have to completely go through all the grants.gov processes, but that's where it's going to be advertised. We don't have a specific actual name yet because they're still working on this, because this is a bit different for our office to do. And we've been busy working on making sure we're following all the regulations and everything, but looks like there's going to be approximately $35 million available. Final decisions about how big or small they're going to be has not been made. But what I recommend, if this is something your RC&D is going to be wanting some funds to help with outreach, especially towards conservation, keep an eye out, check grants.gov regularly in August. If by chance I hear it does get, when it does get published, I'll probably let Dana know and she'll get it out to all the people that are involved. But it's not a project I'm working on, but I talked to the person who is working on it this morning just to find out where it stood. So it's available. It's going to be a lot of money available. And again, it's not going to be competitive, but there's also going to be requirements. And so keep an eye out for it. Now I want to pass it over to Michael because he's got a great presentation on what our resources are with our agency.
Thank you, Terry, and congratulations, at least almost. I think you're on mute still.
You're good.
All right, hopefully you can see my screen now.
We can.
Okay, and so I work in our resource inventory and assessment division on our outcomes team as my primary job, but I'm also the leader of our historically underserved working group in an RCS that brings a lot of staff together at the national level from all different parts of our agency, across programs and some of our scientific and technical side, but also brings in people from the state and local levels as well to represent those points of view in the work that we do. And so just to give you a sort of a brief overview, there's a breakdown of our working group in how we try to generate resources, but also work towards improving a lot of the benefits that are provided for minority farmers and ranchers, where we do a lot of background research, but we also generate communications products and metrics to evaluate how we're performing based on the populations that exist out there for historically underserved producers. And we also, sorry, I can't see the chat if somebody put something in there. We also push for a lot of policy changes. And the entire goal of our working group is to push for maintenance and improvement of the services that we can provide for historically underserved producers. And a big part of that is generating resources that can be used out in the field. And so we have two new ones that are coming out. One is ready, one is in development soon, which I'll explain here, that are big comprehensive resources, whether they're directly for the producer or for staff, NRCS staff, FSA staff, or our partners in our districts that are working with that are trying to outreach to producers. And one is we've spent a lot of time coordinating across agencies trying to centralize all of the different resources and information that are out there for programs and services that are offered for minority farmers, but also your beginning farmers, veterans, and low income as well. But also sort of what it means to be historically underserved, why you may be a group that's targeted by specific programs and services. And so we take that all, we're gathering it all into one place because there are fact sheets out there and booklets out there and sites on farmers.gov. And so what this is going to be is a large guide that takes producers from, what does it mean to be historically underserved? Why are you considered? What should you expect and how do you prepare to engage with service center staff or people in your district representatives, and then takes you through working with different agencies and all the different programs and services you can benefit from. And the way we designed it is it's going to be a sort of a small book because there's a lot in there. That can be given to staff and producers and partners, but also it can be broken up in different sections and it will be into pamphlets and fact sheets with all the updated information that we have and worksheets for producers to use. And I should have hit next slide because these are all the major sections that are in it right now. And the goal is to have it start being distributed by the end of the summer. And so it'll be in print, but it's also going to be developed as an interactive part of farmers.gov. So there'll be a getting started with USDA section of the website. And then you can click through all these different categories and go through what everything delineates to. We're going through, we did a broad review across FBAC agencies and had people weigh in on the content of it. So we're going through a big revision right now. So I didn't really have much I could show you that's designed except for the cover page and the index with the content. But I can answer questions if people want about what kind of content is in there. And so this is something we want to be able to provide not only because of the updated information, but because it's all centralized in one place. And then we are also, we delivered a huge topic about complex land ownership, which is included in that guide. But we developed a training last fall, working with Robert Zabwa at Tuskegee University and Sam Cook at North Carolina State University, who are experts on the topic, have been working in that area for decades, whether it's on research or on working with producers and landowners themselves directly to try to solve complex land ownership issues. We also worked with Tarek Boley over at the FSA and some other NRCS folks, and it's a training designed for staffer representatives that are working with either through outreach or through direct assistance to try to help solve those complex land ownership issues for people in the communities out there. And we delivered it in the fall, but what we did was we recorded the training and we had a slide deck with a lot of information in there that takes you through basics of complex land ownership issues, an overview of the Uniform Partition of Heirs Act and how different states have or have not adopted it to apply to their citizens. Some of the updates from the 2018 Farm Bill to help deal with that, like relending through FSA and some other aspects. And so this can be shared. This is something we developed initially for our own staff, but then had service providers and other partners in mind when we developed it. And so it can easily be shared. And so, sorry, I thought I heard somebody talking. So I'm just looking at these questions. So I think those are the two major new resources I wanted to be able to present. But there are many that we're still working on, and I'm excited to be able to produce over the next year or two as we continue working. But these are the two new big ones that are either already, like I can share this for anyone who asks, or can post it if you have a file sharing system for all of you, and then the guide that's going to be coming soon. Yeah.
This is Terry. Just wanted to add, oh, am I muted? Oh, no, I'm not muted.
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
That there are resources on www.farmers.gov. And NRCS at the state level, I really encourage you to contact your state office. They have people that work on outreach and partnership activities that can also be a resource, and they may have resources that are specifically tied to your state and the issues of what the issues that are most important in your state for conservation. So that's a recommendation. The national office is going to be continuing to expand. For this administration, the social justice, environmental justice is very important. And so there's a push for us to be much more accountable, and USDA has a long history of sometimes being accountable and not necessarily being accountable, but there's going to be a lot of resources. The other thing too is to go to the USDA website And, you know, search on other agencies, because other agencies also have resources. Ours right now is based, you know, ours is based on conservation because that's the major part of what we do. But there can be other resources for you for a number of activities. So I don't want to take any more time away from Jared, if possible. Dana, how do you want to answer the handle questions?
If you can, both you and Michael stay on for until we finish, and then we have all our Q&A at the end.
Okay.
Okay, that'd be great. All right, and now I'd like to introduce Jared Carter, who has I think this is the best name I've ever seen for an RC&D. Alabama's Mountains, Rivers, and Valley RC&D.
Yeah, it gets complicated. It's a mouthful. But yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen. But yeah, so my name is Jared Carter. Let me start this. There we go. And so yes, Alabama's Mountains, Rivers, and Valleys RC&D Council. And so we're located in Northeast Alabama. And so, yeah, so they reached out to me to talk about our efforts in reaching minority farmers. And so my language here, socially disadvantaged, may be old language. So I think that historically underserved, socially disadvantaged is similar language. And so, but let me tell you just quickly about us. So in the green right here, this is our area. We have 8 counties in Northeast Alabama. And so we are a lot like any other RC&D council, but we provide our area's residents with agricultural, environmental education, recreation, and community development programs. And so one of them, the agricultural related side, is very much geared towards historically underserved, at least, farmers. And so this is a closer look at our area right here. But we have 3 programs. Really, we have 5 or 6 different agricultural programs, but 3 that definitely tie to this discussion. A small farmer education program, a veteran farmer conference, and Addie's veteran therapeutic farming, kind of a supportive program. And so our small farmer education program, we do it throughout the year. So we put on 10 to 12 farmer education workshops, and this is all within an NRCS grant. And so this is just our opportunity we have to get a broad audience of all kinds of farmers with minority farmers, veteran farmers, whoever, to kind of come along inside of it. And then also, all of these give us a chance to gather information about our farmers so we can better serve our farmers. We found our niche in North Alabama with veterans. And so we do have outreach to minorities, but more recently, we've kind of geared that towards veterans. But in all this talk about our outreach to veterans, it can definitely correlate to minority outreach as well. And so this small farmer education is the longest running program that we have. I've been doing this for 3 years, and before I came along, they've been doing it for at least 8 years. So it's been going on for a long time in our area. And then because we were able to talk to all these small farmers in our area, we found a lot of them were veterans, and that can happen to any of you if y'all do the same thing or interested in doing the same thing. Getting to know your farmers in each county by doing these multiple workshops, you figure out of the categories that fall within historically underserved, which ones you can gear your programs to. And so that led us to do an annual Veteran Farmers Conference. And so we have enough a population of veteran farmers in our area. So we put on a conference. So we're 4 years into this. Last year we weren't able to do it, and this year we had to do virtual. But in 2019, we did a veteran farmer conference, and we had about 180 attendees. And so that shows you that if you put on a one big event, especially after doing a lot of smaller events, then you can get the numbers fairly easily. It does take work, but the numbers are definitely there. And so this is just an opportunity that we found that we can bring together that historically underserved community together in one place. And also, again, all of these offer us a chance to get to know our farmers better through data collection. And then lastly, we have Addie's Veteran Therapeutic Farming. And so this is, as far as numbers go, this is kind of a smaller, tighter program, but it connects veterans to farmers, and they don't have to be, the veterans to be connected, they don't have to be farmers. We just want to offer a possibility for veterans who are suffering from PTSD or other service-related conditions to get their hands dirty and get involved in outdoor therapy. And then just talking to a lot of our veteran farmers, that they entered that lifestyle for a reason, because they found that it was very therapeutic, very healthy physically and mentally for them. And so they're doing that either in the evenings and weekends, on top of their full job, or they transitioned into it as a career after service. And so that's just an opportunity to tie these other programs with a supportive program rather than an educational program. And so, I'm sure we're all used to this language, but socially disadvantaged, historically underserved, new and beginning farmers, and I put at the last one, women, veterans, et cetera, because sometimes it'll mention socially disadvantaged and separately it'll mention female farmers and ranchers, or veteran farmers and ranchers, and so forth. And so we are now heavily geared towards veterans, and we have recently been awarded a grant from NRCS to put on a Women in Ag conference and farm tour that we'll be putting on next year. And so we are kind of getting more into the historically underserved audiences. We're kind of broadening out. But I'll talk mainly about veterans, as that's been our experience in the past few years. So, and I hope for you to learn from at least from what I've done. And so how do you find which minority farmers to serve in your area? So one way is to look at your service area demographics, all your counties. What's the population, what's the race, ethnicities, what's the gender and all that, and age groups as well. You'll find that through census data. That can be state or federal information. And then, so when I do a grant, that's the information I typically include, is what I glean from census data, so from official census data. But if you're just trying to get a grasp on what your area holds, then it's okay to use, a website that's, been built by a nonprofit or, a collaboration of partners. And so I use Data USA, that's datausa.io. And that's very reliable. I think MIT is a partner in that collection, so it's pretty reliable. And that breaks it down county by county, what your ethnicities, what your age groups, male, female percentages, everything like that. So you get a good idea of what your service area holds. But demographics alone don't tell you how many farmers are within that minority group. And so that's where your state and federal partners come in. So NRCS, Extension, FSA, organizations like that and offices like that, they won't be able to outright give you contacts and data, but you can ask them, of what is there enough, African-American farmers in this county to have a program for them, or in this service area to have a program for them? And that's what we've done. So the reason we have dived into veterans is because we know through our connections that there have been veteran farmers in the area. And then grassroots, if you're doing meetings already, who's coming to your meetings? What are they saying? Do they wish that there would be more for them if they're a minority, if they're a veteran, if they're a woman? Are they saying, man, I wish there was something for us? And then that's kind of how you can get more information from them, just kind of chat with them. And so for us, so when I mentioned demographics aren't necessarily everything, so our two big minorities are African Americans and Hispanic. So our African American population, heavy in Madison County, in Morgan, right, let's say Madison right here, Morgan right here, there's a big city right here, and Limestone, there's a city. So it's mainly urban population. So there are African American farmers in our area, but the demographics, show heavy urban population rather than rural or farmer population. And then Hispanic, we have a heavy concentration in Morgan County and Marshall County, but almost none of them are farmers because they are mostly there because they are working the chicken processing plants. And so you may look at just general demographics and say, oh, we have a large percentage of Hispanic population. Let's do a Hispanic farmer program. And you won't be able to have any outcomes from that because none of them are farmers. And so what we did find, though, was because in Madison County, in Huntsville, Alabama, there's a Redstone Arsenal, Army Arsenal, and because of that presence, there's a high veteran population because after they have served, they have a job preference. So it's kind of if you're a veteran, you're high on the preference list of any job in Huntsville. So they flock to that area and the surrounding areas. But we've also found that a lot of veterans like agriculture, and so they do a lot of it in their spare time if they have a full-time job. And then we've also seen a lot of these veterans come back from, we have a high population of Vietnam veterans, and this is a lifestyle they grew up with. They swore off agriculture only to come back to agriculture. And so that we have a lot of those guys that have done that. Plus, we've had a lot of younger veterans come from service straight into agriculture. So we definitely have the population of veterans to be able to have a program dedicated to them. And so, like I mentioned before, we have those 3 programs, and I wanted to give you this model that you might be able to do on your own, whatever your historically underserved audience is, whether it be minority, women, or veterans. So what we did and what we started with, which is why it's number 1, it's bold and outlined because this is the longest lasting. This is kind of the centerpiece and the start of it all, is numerous small outreach meetings across your counties. And so this is out. So I already said that. If you're just beginning, you don't have to do it this way. We just know that this has worked for us. So I can't recommend you start with a conference because we didn't start with a conference, but it's possible. But I can recommend that you start with numerous small outreach meetings. And so we do about 10 meetings a year. And that's with an RCS grant. On average, we have 25 to 30 farmers show up, and we do these on various topics. So numerous small outreach meetings will get you kind of a lot of farmers. Now, they're not going to attract solely minority farmers. For us, it's just the broad reach of all farmers in the area, and some of them will be historically underserved. But that gets you the audience to talk to. And once you find out what your niche is, once you find out which historically underserved population to reach out to, then when you have enough interest, you can go on to the conference for your target audience. And that's just an annual conference. Put a lot of time into it. We've tied our conference budget with our NRCS grant for the numerous small outreach meetings. So they're one grant to do both of them. And so we do ours in May, just an annual conference. And it's just an opportunity to bring in some statewide speakers, some more specific, whatever your population is, that specific topic that they might be interested in. And then lastly, we came up with the ADDIES, the Veteran Supportive Program. And that could look like whatever you wanted to, and that's not necessarily required, the supportive program, but we have found it beneficial because it also shows that you're not just interested in getting the numbers, but you're also interested in actually serving them. And so I'll go to R. So this is our kind of our model. So 10 meetings, 25 farmers, about on average. So that looks like, if we do have repeat farmers, but you're looking at 200 to 250 farmers reached through these meetings. Our Veteran Farmers Conference we hold in May. I said 150, in the best, the 2019 conference, we had 180. And then our veteran therapy farming program. So I have these arrows to show you that each one feeds into the other. So I have it as complementary efforts. So every workshop that we have, whether we know they're veterans in the crowd or not, we push our Veteran Farmers Conference. At our Veteran Farmers Conference, we push our small farmer workshops. So for small farmer workshops, we also talk about our Addie's Veteran Therapy Farming Program. And so since the therapy farming program is also kind of a closer community, then we talk to them about attending the small farmer workshops and the Veteran Farmer Conference if they haven't already attended. And they're very likely to show up to those. So these are not, they're separate, but they also kind of tie in and overlap to some degree. And so I'll talk a little bit more on the technical and practical side, since we have been doing events for a while, how to get those farmers to your events. And so the number one is to offer attractive and beneficial topics. So these are farmers, and we all know farmers, that especially those that have full-time jobs, they're farming in the evenings, they're farming in their weekends. So they have a packed schedule. And so we need to offer them, if we want them to attend an event, to offer them something that's worthwhile for them to attend to, because they are sacrificing time from their farm. And so these are three that we've done in the past year: improving your farmer's market booth for better sales, financial planning and record keeping for your farm, and managing your land or your farm for wildlife. So another way to get your minority farmers to your event is to tap into your partners' contacts. So whether you have extension agents, agricultural professionals, NRCS, FSA, if you partner with universities or whoever, have them somehow involved in these workshops, and then they can share that to their side, their network. And so you're reaching into your network and their network at the same time to attract these farmers. So for example, I'll show you two workshops that we've done. One was improving your farmer's market booth for better sales, and we did 3 repeat workshops in 3 different counties in our area. But we invited Don Wombles. He's the Farmers Market Authority Director, and that's part of our state's Ag and Industry Department. And so he knew a lot of people in our area, and he shared this with his contacts, and we got some registration from that. And so and it also helps to have somebody who's also doing something, right? So he was pushing this right here, the Sweet Grown Alabama. This is a branding for our state grown produce. And so he was pushing that. And so it was no problem for him to attend the workshop to talk on this topic, as long as he could push his new initiative. And then the other workshop, financial planning and record keeping for your farm. So similar thing here, Jessie, the extension agent, this is kind of her role within the extension office, is to kind of help farmers with budgeting and financial planning. And so I don't have an agricultural background. I'm not a farmer, even though I grew up on farmland, but I have an environmental science background. So with all that said, I rely on these types of people to speak at these workshops. And so, I've had no problem. As soon as I, ask them and invite them to be a part of this workshop, they're more than willing to come. And then also, being an extension agent, she has a lot of contacts that she can also share this event too. And they also, Extension and NRCS, typically keep records of their contacts, including race, ethnicity, gender, and all that kind of stuff. So if they wanted to, they could pinpoint the audience as well. So third, to get minority farmers to your events, push it on Facebook. So I usually create an event. You don't have to use ads, but I typically use at least $25 for an event. The good thing about Facebook ads is that you can target geographical areas of interest. So you can say, I want to target farmers or people who have said they're interested in farming in Madison County or in the Huntsville area or in Morgan County, whatever area you're looking at. And then gender, you can say, want this to target women interested in agriculture in Madison County. I think the only thing that you can't target the ads for is based on race and ethnicity. They don't have that option. So I'll also say this, so create an event, push it out there however you want to, and it should get likes or people who say they're going or interested. We've learned this the hard way, that doesn't really mean anything. So you can have, 30, 40, 100 people say they're going, but we've been to an event before and almost nobody showed up because we just went off of what Facebook said. So what I do is anybody that clicks on that event that says they're interested or going, then I personally message them on Facebook, giving them a link to register. So this is just kind of a guest list right here. This meeting, 25 said they're interested, 8 said they were going. So I open up every single profile, so it doesn't, it doesn't give you their contact info, but the good thing about it is that it does give you their Facebook profile, so you can go in, you can personally message them, and I just have this right here. Thanks for your interest. I saw that you said you were going or whatever. You can register now at this link. That way I know for sure if they're coming or not. And then this kind of ties in with what I just said. We've required online registration just recently. And the reason, so I've done meetings like this where I walk in blind, not knowing how many people are coming, if anybody's coming, and I do not like that feeling. So the way we've done it is required online registration. So not only does that give you an idea of how many people will actually be there, but it lets you also collect data on your farmers. So where on Facebook you can't target based on minorities, if you have them register online, and I use Cognito Forms, it has a free option. We use the premium option because we do this enough. But you can ask for things like name, address, email, and then you can ask for their gender, ethnicity, age. If you do this, if you ask for gender, ethnicity, age, I always put the prefer not to answer, because some people just don't want to give out personal details, so it kind of gives them an out. But get their email. If you don't get anything else, get their email address. And this helps you kind of build an email list, which we'll get here in a second. But while they're filling this online registration out, I just take this time to answer or have them answer other questions like farm type, what are they growing, where their farm is, if they have a farm name, and stuff like that. Just so, when we're developing future topics, we can look at what they're dealing with and kind of do that, because we have a lot of sheep farmers in our area. So we do a couple of sheep workshops, so small ruminant workshops. And we also have a lot of small chicken farmers. And so lastly, I also ask them for outcome results. Are you familiar with NRCS programs? Yes, no, somewhat. And then I'll do a follow-up afterwards. Are you familiar with NRCS programs? Yes, no, somewhat. So the goal is for them to increase their familiarity with the programs. And then this kind of builds on what I talked about just then. Build an email list for newsletters and individual emails. So we do online registration because we're collecting emails. And then the more you collect, the more you can send these people future event information. So even though Facebook is out there, email is still the best way. Even though there's all these other outlets, newsletters, whatever, email is still the best way to get results. Meaning, if you're looking at inviting somebody to an event, the best way to get them to come is to personally invite them through email. And so I do a newsletter for our organization and kind of get mixed results. So some of it will go into some people's inboxes, some will go into some people's spam folders. And so that's why I don't use things like MailChimp for our event invitations. I do use GMass. So GMass is a Google extension. So you have to have Google Mail to use this, but you can do one email. So you can type one email up, including a link to your invitation or your event, and then send it to hundreds of people. But it looks like you send it to that one person. So it still looks like an individual email to that person. If you CC hundreds of people on one email, Google's going to call that spam. So that's why I don't do it that way. So I use GMass. There's a free version that allows you to do 50 emails a day. We do more than that with our invitations. So I use the paid version, which is like $120 or something like that. But if you're using it for minority outreach, you can tie that into a grant. And then lastly, just follow up, get feedback. And so we all, if we're doing grants, we get evaluations. But after every event, just chat with them afterwards, kind of get a for what they're interested in next. I've had some good luck with this. I've talked to them afterwards. They say they're interested in things like small ruminants, hydroponics, chicken processing, and we've done those workshops because we've gotten that feedback. And they also seem to appreciate that we actually take their feedback and do something with it. And then also, every time we have a meeting like that, I email them afterwards, just kind of the same thing, one email to all of them with their NRCS contacts of each county and other resources that we may have mentioned or other contacts that we may have mentioned. And so this is it. Lastly, I just want to talk real quick about the benefits of having a conference. So once you are comfortable enough with doing these events and the idea of a conference, it's very meaningful for the target audience. So if you have, African-American farmers or veteran farmers or women farmers, they find a community that they can be a part of. So for us, veteran farmers, so farmers in general have a high suicide rate. Veterans in general have a high suicide rate. And so this community actually gets them together, removes them from that isolation that occurs in rural communities and being veterans. And they're actually part of a real community. So this is kind of what that conference creates. And then also they are getting relevant information and education very specific to them. So we reach a larger geographical range. So whereas normally we attract people within the county or maybe adjacent counties with our workshops, with this conference, we do a 8-county service area. With this conference, we're looking at, a range of 30 counties, definitely like a strong representation in 16 counties, but even reaching down to about half the state. And then we get a handful of statewide participants as well. And then like I mentioned before, this opens you up to some statewide speakers as well. And then it takes a team, so it makes a team. You form stronger partnerships because you have to form partnerships to have a conference like this. And so we've developed new partnerships, and we've also kind of strengthened our existing partnerships with Extension, with NRCS, with the local universities and community colleges around the area that have agricultural programs. And so this picture right here is actually a picture of our Veteran Farmer Conference. And this is the one we had about 180 people in it, and it was held at Wallace State Community College, that has a very strong fruit and vegetable program for small farmers. And so we were able to create a really good partnership with them that we think will continue, and have them host this conference. And they did for us for free. And so it's very meaningful, not just for your audience, but also for your organization as well. And so that's all I have. So I have my contacts here. So thank you very much. And I think we have a Q&A time. Sorry, I definitely went over my time allotment, but I'll take any questions that you have.
Okay, if you will stop so we can see everybody, that would be great. Jared, that was excellent, especially the steps you did on showing people how you find your into groups. And I know in the chat, we had a couple people said that they used Eventbrite and MailChimp for newsletters out there. And then we had a question that says, Jared, does your council partner with the other RC&D councils in your state?
Yes, we do. So we have a really good state association in Alabama. And we have partnered with other councils, and we're willing to partner with other councils.
Okay. All right. So now we have time for questions for all three of our speakers, either Terry about the grants that she talked about coming out, or Michael Carlo about the working group that he does and the report that he has available. So we have one here. It said, Jared, so all the ag programs you discussed today are funded through NRCS. Is that a grant or an agreement?
So they're grants. We have a 2-year grant contract for our farmer outreach, those meetings that also include the Veteran Farmer Conference. But I will say for the ADDIES program, the supported program, that is not funded through NRCS, that's funded through it began funded through other foundations. I'm still, it's grant supported, but through other sources.
Okay. And we will be sending out all these presentations to you, but Jared, someone would like you to put your email in the chat box. If you can. So other questions, you can either put them in the chat or you can just unmute yourself and ask. So what other questions do we have for our speakers? We still have about 10 or 11 minutes.
Hi, this is Pam Gauss in Montana, and my question is for Jared. What were the reasons that you found for the vets who finally returned to the land after having sworn off it forever? Were they coming home, or family, or get to the land, or escape, or income? What the heck?
Yeah,
brought them back?
Several of them did that, and so most of them probably just because they had time in their life to do this. Grew up in Alabama, several of them within sharecropping families. And so they joined the military, and then that made them military life, and then they left that to do other things. But it's similar that they found comfort, I guess, maybe looking at agriculture with a different eyes than they were when they were younger. They found, I think primarily they found comfort from or release from the PTSD or other things that they were suffering from that they didn't have before. So when they were younger, they just saw it as work, but now they see it as their.
Excellent.
Other questions, just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
This is Terry. I'm just making a comment that I've put a link in the chat to the person who's get you to, and so the person is, there's a new beginning farmer and rancher USDA wide program, and that's actually located in Farm Service Agency. And Sarah Campbell is the person who is the beginning farmer and rancher, I guess, program manager, but that's a link on farmers.gov. USDA, you can type in usda.gov or it seems it's changed to farmers.gov for resources from USDA, but I thought that might be helpful. And FSA is also going to be working on expanding their outreach activities. So they may also be a resource for information or even may funding. I know this is concentrated on NRCS's activities, but again, RC&D's when it was a program, it was a USDA program and can work with any of those agencies. And of course, as nonprofits, you can work with any of those agencies, USDA agencies.
Thank you, Terry. Other questions? Just unmute yourself. I did.
Alice, we can't hear you.
Connecticut. Oh, sorry. Jared, do you mind sharing which grant through NRCS? Is that like an RCPP grant or?
I would have to look back on it. My executive director put that in, but it was outreach for socially disadvantaged and veteran farmers, something similar to that language.
Okay. I will say that some of the work that we're doing with veterans is actually through rural development. So,
Okay.
you know, we work with NRCS on some other stuff, but for our Farm Up program, it's through rural development.
Okay. Other questions? I did have one for Michael. If you had to give a definition of complex land ownership, in case somebody hadn't heard that, how is that related to minority farmers?
Any type of ownership where you don't have clear title or share ownership with multiple people.
And is that typical in, say, the Black community?
Yeah, so air property is the most common, where multiple people have inherited shares in a property, but you don't have like a specific acre that you can point to. You just have, you share the overall ownership with somebody.
Because I'm aware of that in the Black community in Virginia and Tennessee. So
Yeah, southeastern US is the most prominent problem for that, especially for Black and African American producers. Absolutely.
Okay. And Michael, if you could send us where they can get to that slide deck that you talked about.
Oh, sorry, I meant to put my email in the comments. Yes.
Okay. All right. And we'll also share that when we branch out to people. And thank you, Jared, for telling me, because I was like, why are there so many veterans? But then when you said Huntsville, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense there. What do you know of your veteran farmers? How many of those are Black or?
Yeah, so a larger percentage, so maybe 20–25%.
Okay. Okay, great.
I actually wanted to ask Jared, this is Mike Carlo. When you were doing, you said you use a lot of census data to sort of evaluate where those communities and stuff are. Were you using ag census data for that, as well as like the regular US Census data, or?
Was I using, what was the first one?
Ag census, just from.
Oh, yes, I was.
Okay. I was just curious. We do it. We try to help as much as we can in my group when people want to do analytics like that. Because we have staff that can do it, so we're always willing to help.
Sure.
So I was just curious. Yeah, how much our methodology is similar to what you all are doing out there. Yeah.
So Michael, they could contact you to find out maybe options to find out information too.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some comprehensive layers of data that we can use to look at. Of course, the agricultural census data, but then the regular US Census data, and all kinds of data we've been developing for a couple of years now.
Great. Okay. Other questions for any of our speakers? Just unmute yourself. Anyone else? Well, Susan, while we're waiting on maybe another question, do you want to do your final survey for everybody? And it pops up immediately. So if you could fill that out, it would be great. And Terry, have you got any other thoughts about working with minority groups, since you've got 17 years over RC&D to talk about?
Well, again, there's a multitude of different groups out there. I know as Jared was saying, or Michael was saying, in the Southeast, there's a lot of history there of African Americans not being reached out to or excluded. But there are also others that may be in your area, whether they're Hispanic. There are other Asian groups that have come in and want to be farmers. So I think it's getting an idea within your area of, if you might already know this, but of who and where they are. And that might be some help, the data that Michael was talking about. And then I think I just continue to reach out again, as to the NRCS state office, because they can help with this. I think what Jared presented was really helpful about how to do it from a council's perspective. That's not something we're going to be telling you per se how to do it, but there should be resources there. And, most of the state, I would say all the states could use some assistance in reaching out. And I would also let them know that you're doing it, not for permission, but they know, and that who knows, there could be state level assistance, whether it's technical or financial. I think that's an important thing. I would also, go to FSA. FSA is been under the wire for a long time from the history of USDA. And so they're going to be making a much more concerted effort to reach out. And so I think, they're located in many of our co-located offices. So I would also reach out to them, because they also have conservation related programs too, not the same as ours, but they do. So.
And I was going to mention, sometimes you can come in the back door, Jared. One of the things that we found on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, we had a lot of chicken processors, and they allowed us to pass out some things that we did a small session on, so you want to farm. And they allowed us to provide that because, one, it maybe made a happier employee. And then we found out we had several people who then got into the system to purchase a farm. Another one was with when we had minority groups coming through in harvesting. Many times we found out that there were options that they would like to learn to farm. So there's always other ways to come in when they're not farmers, but they might want to come back now, as you said. Or
also reaching out to youth, because the average age of farmers, I think the median age is in the 50s or 60s, and we're still going to need farmers. So that's true. And there are going to be resources. I think there'll be more resources available for beginning farmers and ranchers too, as time goes on.
And another option, this will really date me, is NRCS used to go through churches in the Black community, especially.
A lot of times they can be recipients of some of our outreach agreements too. So that's another resource.
Right.
I would say we often still do, and the Office of Partnerships and Public Engagement for USDA overall, who NRCS also works with, that has a lot of programs and outreach for exactly that, through faith-based community groups.
Right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. To Michael, Jared, and Terry, thank you so much. And Terry,
it's good to be here.
Thank you, and enjoy those next 15 days.
I will try.
Okay.
But I'll still be around. Okay, thank you. It's great to see everybody and to interact with RC&D people.
And
You are the greatest. Bye.
We'll be
Thank
following
you.
up. We'll follow up with these presentations and any other contact information that was given today. Thank you.